Hello, my name's David Seaman, and this is the Three Lions Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions Podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. How are you? Hope I find you well. Thanks once again for tuning in. The recent episodes have gone down really well. I'm glad you enjoyed them. As always, they are always available at your podcast provider of choice or threelionspodcast.com. There are plenty there to while a journey away. Now, this episode was suggested by listener and friend of the show, Stuart Franklin. Has come about, what with all the talk surrounding the venue for the upcoming Andorra game, which, as you now know, has been finally confirmed as being at the RCDE Stadium in Barcelona, home of Espanyol. Now, with regards to the regulations, it appears that teams are supposed to submit a venue to UEFA 120 days before the match date. This then gives the relevant authorities time to conduct their checks, their reviews, their approvals, which would mean that Andorra should have notified UEFA of the ground back on the 7th of February. However, they, or UEFA, or indeed our own FA, don't have to disclose that information back then. Obviously, something's happened and they've moved it to Barcelona. But with it being 65 days from the announcement until the fixture, it's understandable that fans have become frustrated not being able to organise transport or accommodation well in advance. But as you'll find out, we've had worse. Now, before I continue with this episode, Stuart, he got in touch with me through the socials. You can too. The show is on the likes of X or Twitter, whatever you may call it, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. It's also on YouTube too, if that's how you consume your podcasts. However you follow it, give it a like, a follow, a thumbs up. It's always appreciated. And like Stuart, you can message me through those. Or if you're old school and you like your email, threelionspodcast@gmail.com. Spell 3, T-H-R-E-E. And very quickly, the Ko-fi account. Now, I pay to have the podcast put out there, pushed out to the likes of Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. I say all those places that you find podcasts. I pay for it because I enjoy doing it. But you are more than welcome to help with those costs. Any contribution is gratefully received. Just head to kofi.com/3 Lions Podcast. That's ko-fi.com/3 Lions Podcast. Thank you. Right then. England at neutral venues. What, where, when? So generally the idea of a neutral venue would be somewhere that neither side has an advantage, either through familiar surroundings or a home crowd. I guess examples being the FA Cup semi-finals, which historically played at the likes of Villa Park, Hillsborough, Old Trafford, or since 2008 at Wembley on a regular basis. Some may also say that a neutral ground could be like the 39th game, that game that's often spoken about, a Premier League match being played out of the country. It's not a conversation I really want to get onto, though, here. For international sides, though, it's not uncommon to play away from your home nation. I remember going to see Brazil against Argentina at the Emirates Stadium in 2006. And I know Fulham's Craven Cottage has often been used as a venue for international matches in London. And in fact, only recently, the Unity Cup was announced as being hosted in London, a 4-team tournament featuring Ghana, Nigeria, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. All of those teams have a large population in and around the London area. So there could be plenty of reasons, different reasons, why a game is played at a neutral venue. Now, to date, the England senior men have played 1,070 matches, stretching back to 1872, with that very first international away to Scotland. 320 have been at Wembley Stadium, either the old one or the new one. A fair whack of them have obviously been played away too. Now, I make it, England have played 120 matches where neither team derive from the host venue. That could be World Cups, European Championships. I mean, it'd take forever to look at all of these. The likes of the Nations League in 2019 or the Tournoi in France in 1997. And there have also been a fair few where end-of-season tours have taken place, where England have played matches in various locations, but not against the host nation. So I scoured the history books. I also checked out England Stats and England Football Online. Both of those are well worth a look. And I've come up with a few games that you may remember, some you may not, and some that you'd probably rather forget. Now, I know I said I wouldn't really mention the tournaments that England have played in, but I think it's important to feature one, as it was the first occasion where England played at a neutral venue. After not feeling the need to participate in the first 3 World Cups, England qualified for Brazil in 1950, courtesy of the 49-50 Home Nations competition. We topped the group ahead of Scotland, Wales and Ireland with maximum points, and there began our journey to our first international tournament. The 25th of June 1950, Billy Wright led the team out at the famous Maracanã in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Famously, that place could hold up to 200,000 spectators, but on this occasion, only 29,000 were in attendance. Fortunately, though, the unfamiliar surroundings didn't put us off, as goals from Stan Mortensen and Wilf Mannion saw England record a 2-0 win against Chile. Through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s and the 90s, England would take tours in the West, visiting the likes of Brazil, USA and Mexico. I want to take a look at 1976, when England toured the USA in the Bicentennial Cup. Now, they played Brazil in Los Angeles and Italy in New York at the Yankees Stadium. Yes, home of the New York Yankees, a baseball stadium. I've watched this on YouTube. The sand diamond was visible in one half of the pitch. England won the game 3-2, and as it happened, all the goals were scored in the half without the sand diamond.
Outside there, Gordon Hill's coming to the middle. Shannon's there too! A goal! Shannon! 3 goals in 8 minutes, and England go into a 3-2 lead. The second goal for Shannon.
Let's go to 1985, a year that unfortunately saw 2 football tragedies. The Bradford City fire on the 11th of May killed 56 spectators. And then on the 29th of May, the European Cup final between Liverpool and Juventus at the Heysel Stadium in Brussels saw 39 fans killed, mainly Italian, after a wall collapsed on them following disturbances with Liverpool fans. So why a friendly between Italy and England was allowed to take place 8 days later in Mexico is anyone's guess. But it was part of a 3-game end-of-season tour. Whilst no Liverpool players were part of the team that day, Juventus had Antonio Cabrini, Marco Tardelli, Paolo Rossi and Gaetano Soria, either on the pitch or on the bench, who witnessed the tragic events of that day in Brussels. England wore black armbands in that match against Italy in remembrance of all who passed. 8,000 fans rattled around the Azteca Stadium that day, where just over a year later, in the same venue, 114,000 would witness both sides of Maradona. On the pitch, England lost 2-1 thanks to a last-minute penalty scored by Albertelli. England would then lose to the hosts Mexico before rounding off the tour with a match, once again at the Azteca, this time against West Germany. By all accounts, the Italians had only arrived in the country 3 days before, so they hadn't fully acclimatised. So after half an hour, they were huffing and puffing around the pitch. England, in red, took advantage, with Brian Robson opening the scoring and Chelsea's Kerry Dixon adding 2 in the second half. 1993, and England travelled to the USA once again to take part in the US Cup, a 4-team tournament played in advance of the World Cup to be held the following year in the country. These games, though, were against the hosts America, Brazil and Germany. England, managed by Graham Taylor, it has to be said, didn't take the strongest of sides with them. We lost to the States in the opening game in Massachusetts, then drew 1-1 with Brazil in Washington in front of 54,000. However, the last game is a bit of a quiz question. Facing Germany in Michigan in the Pontiac Silverdome Stadium. What's so special about that, I hear you say? Well, it was the first international to be played indoors and on natural grass. Yep, the Pontiac Silverdome Stadium had a roof on it. England, though, well, they lost 2-1. A few months later, in November, and possibly one of England's most infamous matches, against San Marino. Played in Bologna in Italy, where 3 years earlier David Platt had scored in the last minute against Belgium in the World Cup. Now, we'd already done ourselves no favours in our previous qualification matches for the '94 World Cup, but there was still a slim chance we could qualify. We needed to win by 7 clear goals and hope other results went our way. Well, we got 7, but only after San Marino scored the quickest ever goal against us. A stray Stuart Pearce back pass was intercepted by David Gualtieri, who stroked it past David Seaman in the England goal after just 8 seconds.
Malaysia lost to England in Graham Taylor's time. So San Marino kick-off. Remember that Holland on this very ground. Oh, there's a mistake by Pearce and humiliation here. Gualtieri. I was going to say that San Marino conceded a goal in the opening seconds against Holland. Well, it's England that have conceded a goal here.
It's 1998 and the French World Cup is on the horizon. And England have been invited to Casablanca in Morocco as part of a World Cup warm-up tournament. It's the King Hassan II International Cup tournament, no less. Now, along with hosts Morocco, Belgium and France, you'd think that with 4 teams participating, and they could all play each other in a round-robin fashion? No, not this tournament. England would only play Morocco and Belgium. And the second game was in front of 25,000 in Casablanca. England drew 0-0 with Belgium, but then lost to them on penalties. Now, the only reason I bring this match up is because, sadly, it was the last time we would witness Paul Gascoigne in an England shirt, 2 days after his 31st birthday. Sadly, a shadow of his former self.
This time headed just wide. That was the cue for another change. Gascoigne made way for David Beckham, and finally things perked up. Lasso almost caught Van der Walle off guard. It finished 0-0, but England still had a chance, and after the teams had exchanged shirts, they had to find them again for the most unenthusiastic of penalty shootouts. Lee and Schifo had theirs saved. And given the kick to keep England in it, Les Ferdinand put everyone out of their misery.
2002, Kobe in Japan. Whilst many of us were packing our bags getting ready for the World Cup, England were already out there, playing a warm-up game against Cameroon. Robbie Fowler equalised deep into injury time to level the game at 2 apiece. Nothing really spectacular to note about the game, other than this was the last time Cameroon wore their famous vest shirt with their shoulders exposed. Now, for those of you who don't know, Puma at the time came up with a kit for the Indomitable Lions that had no sleeves. It was basically a vest, like a basketball vest. Now, they'd worn it previously for the African Cup of Nations earlier in the year, a tournament that Cameroon won. But with the World Cup fast approaching, FIFA, they banned the shirt. They said it was illegal. So you'll notice that for the group games that Cameroon played in the World Cup, they did wear the vests, but with black undersleeves attached. Now, if you are a football shirt fanatic and know your stuff, those shirts, they're like hen's teeth. And when they do come up, you have to dig deep into your pockets if you want one. 2005. No sooner had an end-of-season tour to the USA finished, one where England played the USA and Colombia, the FA and England had arranged a friendly with Argentina in Geneva, Switzerland, and straight away it was already causing controversy, for obvious reasons. It's actually quite a surprise that the game was even given the green light, as 100 miles away on the same day, the Swiss hosted Turkey in Bern in their World Cup 2006 playoff match. And it was well known at the time that England and Turkey, well, they didn't have the best relationship. England fans had been given 8,000 tickets for this game against Argentina, and with the FA looking to make up to £2 million profit, they didn't want any issues to get in the way of that. Thankfully, the game passed off without much incident off the pitch, but on it, it was packed with entertainment. England winning the game 3-2 thanks to 2 late Michael Owen goals.
Gerrard again from the right-hand side. Joe Cole's up. Oh, and there it is. It's the equaliser by Michael Owen. And England are back at 2-2. Just look at the celebration. Crouch comes in far side. But then, then we've got it. England have scored again. It's Michael Owen. It's 3-2. Owen.
Now, prior to this latest announcement, England have had a previous relationship with the city of Barcelona. They actually played at the Nou Camp in 1980 in a friendly, winning 2-0. That's not where I'm going with this one. Part of our ill-fated qualification campaign for Euro 2008, we were drawn with Croatia, Russia, Israel, Macedonia, Estonia and Andorra. That campaign, Andorra played all their home games, bar ours, at their Estadi Comunal stadium in the Principality. Our match in March 2007 was to be played at the Olympic Stadium in Barcelona, home to the 1992 Games. You remember Linford Christie and his gold medal 100 metres? Well, it was also home to La Liga side Espanyol. With the Estadi Comunal only being able to hold up to 3,000, it was no wonder they wanted to look at bigger alternatives to the game. And whilst the Olympic Stadium could hold a capacity of 55,000, that evening just accommodated 12,800. The vast majority, of course, English. The game, it has to be said, wasn't a classic, played in the pouring rain, which wasn't pleasant for those of us on the uncovered top tier. England, being managed by Steve McLaren, went in at half-time goalless. The England fans in attendance, myself included, well, we weren't happy and we booed the team from the pitch. The second half, the team, they redeemed themselves. They had to. Steven Gerrard opened the scoring, then got a second. This was before Jermaine Defoe had a shot in the last minute of the game, which took a deflection and was slowly rolling towards the goal line, only for substitute David Nugent of Preston North End to tap it home for his one and only England goal in his one and only England game.
A touch from Rooney, a shot from Gerrard and a goal for England. 8 minutes into the second half. Huge relief all round. Well, they're happier now in the stands and certainly on the pitch. Gerrard again. There's no offside. Defoe and on the line was Nugent. They'll have to sort that one out between them.
Well, in the record books it'll go down as David Nugent's, I think. And that's a striker. All scorers pinch goals and Nugent's done that, to be perfectly honest with you. Defoe's smiling, but inside he'll be raging.
18 months later, and England would return to the same venue as they were once again drawn to Andorra. This time, it was the 2010 World Cup qualifying. Steve McClaren had since departed, and Italian Fabio Capello was now at the helm. Remember that game I mentioned that was played at the Yankee Stadium? Capello actually played in that. But this would be his first competitive match in charge of England, having taken 5 previous friendlies. And just like the previous Euro campaign, Andorra would play Ukraine, Croatia, Belarus and Kazakhstan, all at their Estadi Comunal Stadium, apart from England, who once again travelled to Barcelona. This time, only 10,300 decided the trip was worthwhile, and with the same goalless half-time score, you wonder, maybe they had the right idea. Chelsea's Joe Cole came on as a second-half substitute to score a brace to ensure we came away with an opening 3 points on the way to South Africa.
I'm afraid the England players are in for an ear bashing, both outside the dressing room and inside. There's the whistle. Judge for yourselves the reaction to England's first half display here in Barcelona. If England don't score in the next 45 minutes, it will be one of the worst results in their history, and it would be Andorra's best. It is finished in England's favour. It was hard work in the first half, but as fitness levels fell amongst the Andorrans, for all their pluck and bravery and their organisation and defensive discipline, England took their chances. Joe Cole with the two that really mattered, a fierce right-footed volley and then sleight of foot to slide the ball past a committed goalkeeper, both in the first 10 minutes of the second half. And England head in victorious fashion off to Zagreb on Wednesday off the back of a 2-0 win over Andorra here in Barcelona.
2009. It's just over a year until the host venue of the 2022 World Cup will be announced, and the country name of Qatar starts to become familiar with England fans. A friendly with Brazil had been spoken about for some time, but contractual issues had hampered a final decision. They were finally resolved in September, with the match scheduled for November. And it was at Brazil's request that the match be played in Qatar. England, well, they were under pressure to return the favour to Brazil after they were the opponents for the opening Wembley match 2 years earlier. But this match, a friendly, was played under the guise of a celebration of 6 years of the Al Jazeera Sports Channel. It was played at the Khalifa International Stadium, a location where England would open their 2022 World Cup account with that 6-2 win over Iran. But back to 2009, and 50,000 were in attendance to see Brazil win 1-0. A Nilmar goal shortly after half-time. And in fairness, they should have doubled their lead when Ben Foster brought down Nilmar, but Luis Fabiano put the penalty over the bar. And it has to be said, it wasn't England's strongest side, as they were hit by injuries at the time. There was no David Beckham, no Frank Lampard, no John Terry, no Rio Ferdinand or Steven Gerrard, to name a few. But in total, England have played Brazil on 27 occasions. 13 of them have been at home, unsurprisingly all at Wembley. Only 6 have been in Brazil, and the remaining 8 in neutral venues across the world. Now this one, I have to admit, I have next to no recollection of it. Prior to the 2010 South Africa World Cup, and just before Fabio Capello announced his 23-man squad for it, England travelled to Austria, to Graz, to play Japan, who had also qualified. Austria was chosen by many teams then because of its altitude and conditions for training. Apparently there were 15,000 in attendance, and for the 4th match in a row, England conceded. Now this can't have happened in too many games, but Japan scored all 3 goals and still ended up losing the game. They went ahead. Frank Lampard then had a penalty saved before Japan scored 2 own goals, handing the win to England. It came at a time where England and the FA were involved in a few problems. Manager Fabio Capello had been involved with a player ratings website for the World Cup, and Lord Treesman had stepped down as chairman after a newspaper article suggested that he backed Russia for the 2018 World Cup over Spain's bid. It all became very messy at the time. It's now August 2012, and England's last game, 52 days prior, had been against Italy in the quarter-finals of the 2012 Euros in Kyiv. We'd been beaten on penalties and came home. Here we were, now playing them once again. Not in Kyiv, not at Wembley, not even in an Italian location. No, the city of Bern in Switzerland was chosen. England were in fact the home nation. This friendly game had been agreed back in the April, obviously before the two sides met in the Euros. However, the year of 2012 was the year of the London Olympics. But even though they had finished, there were rules about Olympic venues still being unavailable before and after the events they hosted. So Wembley was ruled out, as were the likes of Old Trafford and St James's Park, who had also hosted the Olympic football. So the FA once again turned to Switzerland after they had hosted the Argentina friendly in 2005. Once again, 15,000 were in attendance for this pre-season friendly. They witnessed a game with a fairly experimental and inexperienced lineup, featuring 5 debutants. Goalkeepers Jack Butland and John Ruddy both had a half each. Tom Cleverley, Jake Livermore and Ryan Bertrand were the other debutants. Butland, Cleverley and Bertrand had actually been part of Team GB's squad that made the quarter-finals of the Olympics that summer. But England under Roy Hodgson, despite going a goal down, ran out 2-1 winners thanks to goals from Phil Jagielka and Jermaine Defoe. Scant reward, though, for being knocked out of the Euros 2 months earlier. 2014, England, well, they go on an end-of-season tour come World Cup warm-up to the United States. They found themselves in Miami Gardens in Florida. 38 years after playing in a baseball stadium, England now found themselves in an American football stadium, the Sun Life Stadium, home to the Miami Dolphins. Although in reality it's a multi-purpose stadium. But they played both Ecuador and Honduras. Liverpool's Jonathan Flanagan made his one and only appearance for England against Ecuador, of which the only other highlight, well, was an electrical storm that stopped play for 40 minutes against the Hondurans. Then the most recent neutral venue, excluding our Euro 2024 games in Germany. This was against Ukraine in September of 2023. It was part of our qualification for those Euros. Of course, Ukraine had been invaded by Vladimir Putin's Russia 18 months earlier, so a safe location was required. But it got to June and there was still no confirmation of venue. Rumours then began to circulate. Austria, either in Vienna or Klagenfurt. Ukraine, well, they'd previously played in Slovakia. They'd previously played in Prague, Leverkusen in Germany, and some friendlies had even been played in Lodz in central Poland. It was finally announced on the 9th of June, some 63 days before the game, that the match would be played in Wrocław in Poland. Although by then many had already booked flights based on rumours or hearsay, myself included. With a lot of displaced Ukrainians now in Poland, the match was well attended, 39,000 turning up, with 3,400 from England. Alexander Zinchenko of Arsenal put the Ukrainians ahead in the 26th minute before Kyle Walker equalised minutes before half-time.
Kane trying to pick out Walker, he succeeded. Kyle Walker! What a moment for him! His very first England goal at the 77th attempt. And England are level. Harry Kane turn provider, and for the first time Kyle Walker is the scorer.
We would obviously go on to qualify for the Euros, and Ukraine would finish third in the group behind Italy. So they went on to the playoffs via the Nations League. They beat Bosnia and Herzegovina and Iceland. They found themselves in Germany in a group with Romania, Belgium and Slovakia, in a group that would see each team win one, draw one and lose one. Unfortunately, it was Ukraine who were to finish bottom and go home early. So there we have it. I hope some of those brought back some memories, good or bad. Perhaps you went to some of those. Let me know what you thought. Maybe a neutral venue's a good thing? What was your favourite neutral venue? If you have organised yourself a trip to Barcelona for the game against Andorra, I hope you've managed to get it at a reasonable price. I know there's a music festival going on at the same time, which has basically hiked the prices up. But there are alternatives. There are ways of getting around it. We're England fans and we always seem to get around it. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will be back with you very soon with some more England content. So until next time, take care of yourselves. Cheers.